dance with the king of pop. I can dance.
We are talking Secret Headquarters, a family superhero movie directed by Henry Joost and Ariel Schulman. And this one stars Owen Wilson and Michael Pena. Now this, as I mentioned, is a family film, so we do have to kind of bear that in mind when we're watching it. I've seen some quite harsh reviews saying it's silly. It's a kids' film, so we kind of have to look at it in the context of a family/children's film. But what is the story? It's kind of a mishmash between elements of Iron Man, Batman, Green Lantern, and even the Power Rangers. Essentially an alien UFO crash lands on Earth, and Owen Wilson's character happens to kind of be in the area and gets kind of chosen by this alien technology to become a superhero known as the Guard. And then we have a kind of jump cut 10 years later. He's kind of doing this kind of job in secret. His son thinks he's kind of abandoned him and is never around, but of course he doesn't know that his dad is secretly this kind of superhero. In the meantime, we have this private military company that is losing business because the Guard is sort of solving all the crimes and stuff, and he, Michael Pena's character kind of wants the source of the power for himself, and that's kind of your conflict. And ultimately, we have this kind of group of kids that includes Owen Wilson's character's son discover this kind of secret headquarters in his dad's cabin house. What all happened? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So this movie has been compared to the likes of Spy Kids. I think that's probably quite a fair comparison, to be honest. Let's talk about what I think works in this movie. So I think, obviously the last kind of 15 or so years have really seen the kind of the superhero renaissance in regards to kind of popular culture. So kids who have grown up with this have really grown up in the kind of the golden era of the superhero on screen. So this, I think, is a good introduction to these younger kind of viewers who maybe haven't been around all that long and just kind of getting into kind of watching films, but they are aware of the kind of the superhero culture, and they want to have characters that embody their own kind of age group. I think the kids are around kind of 14. The characters are also around that kind of age. So I think this is probably a reasonable kind of movie for them. I think it's quite cute. It certainly gives like the kind of like the somewhat of the hero's journey with our group of our lead kind of kid characters, if you see what I mean. There's kind of lots of fun explosions and bad guys to kind of punch around and use various kind of gadgets with and things like that. It does kind of take these kind of these Spy Kid tropes and kind of runs with it. It's a very, very similar movie in kind of some ways, and we do have a full-on kind of superhero, supervillain kind of smackdown at the end, albeit it's kind of mixed in with some of the comedy. In regards to the comedy, I think it kind of quite works. I actually think Michael Pena is fairly strong in this role as the kind of the head of this particular kind of like private military kind of company. Has some quite kind of fun lines and quite funny moments as well, with kind of some of the younger cast here. And the special effects, again, I think are reasonable for this kind of level of film. I don't think discerning kids will be too worried about some of the overly kind of CGI aspects of it, but I think it's fine. And I think the movie has elements of that is familiar. Like I've said, there's definitely some of the fight scenes will remind you of kind of Power Rangers. We get big kind of like Batcave vibes here. The actual hero itself is a very much a mix between kind of Iron Man and kind of Green Lantern. And I even quite like that the kind of the main thing about this secret headquarters is it kind of this supercomputer can ultimately 3D print various kind of gadgets. So he's using kind of technology which is kind of around, but it's still in its somewhat of an infancy, but it's kind of familiar with to some people. So I kind of quite like the idea that it's having this this idea of 3D printing various kind of gadgets and stuff like that. I think it's it hits the kind of probably the right tone in regards to what kind of kids might know about or what they might be starting to learn about with technology and stuff like that. So I thought that was relatively kind of good. I actually quite liked our kids to a certain degree, at least most of them. I think they were kind of, you know, not too kind of grating for me as an adult watching them. I still found they're no Stranger Things, let me get like that. I mean, if you compare this to a movie like Stranger Things, that is a show that focuses on kids but is really not for kids, whilst this is a show that focuses on kids and is really for them. There's some kind of certainly some elements where that will come apparent, which we'll kind of come on to. But, you know, overall I think it's a reasonably kind of fun adventure film for the kind of the younger audience. But what doesn't work, so yeah, I mean, it is a kids film, so those of you who are not kids or are just wanting to watch more superhero content, you know, it's a little bit toothless. You know, we have some very obvious kind of non-swear words where someone says, "What the heck?" and things like this, because obviously they want it to appeal to the younger audience. They kind of avoid what would be the obvious kind of swear words and things like that. It's obviously kind of the violence is a little bit more kind of cartoony and such. It's not really, that's not really a criticism, because it's not the film that it's trying to be. It's trying to be a kids film, but I do feel I have to kind of venture to anyone who wants to watch it, who isn't a child, and kind of maybe kind of disappointed because of the fact that it's obviously a little bit kind of goofy at times. The main thing for me, I think the movie runs out of steam, to be honest. You know, it kind of becomes a little bit dull. The bulk of the movie, I mean, it's top and tailed with some scenes that aren't in the kind of the secret headquarters, but I would say probably 60% of the movie takes place within this kind of secret headquarters. It kind of looks a little dull, to be honest. I mean, when you get past the cool first going in there, it's just lots of kind of like cave sets and things like that, and running around kind of corridors. It kind of looks a little dull, and I don't think the kind of the gadgets and stuff that they use really kind of go into kind of full sort of superhero. Now, when I was young, you know, and I was reading comics and things like that, I didn't care about wanting to see actors' faces. I wanted to see the characters. I wanted to see cool costumes and things like that. And I think that's what kids want to see. You know, it's kind of like, you know, we get someone flying around on a jetpack and things like that. I just don't think it goes quite far enough with the kind of like some of the more fantastical elements, and it ultimately becomes kind of like Home Alone, but with kind of like souped up gadgets for, you know, I say around kind of 60% of the movie. So, you know, it kind of ends up being watchable, but not particularly interesting, and ultimately a little bit kind of dull. I think Owen Wilson looks like he's asleep at the wheel in this movie. This was clearly a paycheck gig for him. He's not in it as much as you would think. He isn't the main character. You know, we see him at the beginning, and he kind of shows up towards the end to kind of fight the kind of the bad, you know, our bad guy, so to speak. But for the majority of the movie, he's actually, you know, not present. And the movie is about these kind of kids and how they're kind of a relationship, and it's all, you know, it's all kind of quite typical. You know where it's going to go. I like some of the characters, but I do think some of them are a little bit kind of like grating, and then a little bit kind of over the top. I also think when you can look at this in another point of view, you know, this is about kids who ultimately steal stuff. If you want to look at this from like the way it actually looks maybe to an outsider, you know, a bunch of kids go into somewhere that they're not supposed to go, steal a bunch of stuff, create loads of damage, do crimes like driving at high speed and things like this, and ultimately cause some problems. You know, so obviously the movie doesn't frame it like that. The movie frames it as these are kids are having an adventure and stuff like that. But look at it from another point of view, that's actually kind of what they're doing. So I don't know what kind of, you know, if this movie is meant to be sending positive messages, I don't know if it really succeeds in that. And again, I only say something like that because this is a movie aimed for kids. And I don't know if it really succeeded in having a, you know, a message. And it's just like, oh, we just stumble across these powers. We haven't really earned them. You know, we haven't done anything to kind of be worthy of it. We've just kind of lucked into it, and then we'll take it, even though it's not ours, and then cause a bunch of kind of havoc, and you know, cheat on our tests, and you know, drive 100 miles an hour down a road, which obviously could cause an accident in real life. Things like this. So that might be taking it a little bit too seriously and going it a little bit far, but because this is a kids' film, I feel it does have, it does leave an impression with kids, and therefore I bring it up. Overall, I think it's an okay movie. It's okay for kids. I think it's not a bad watch for an adult, but there's not a lot of meat on the bones. The ultimately it's somewhat toothless, but I'm expecting that. So that kind of part of it isn't going to form part of my score, so to speak, but again, it's just worth mentioning. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. It's a fine movie for kids. It's non-offensive. It's a bit of a time waster. There's kind of, a reasonable amount of kind of fighting and kind of, superheroic things like that. Michael Peña's good. I enjoyed his kind of comedic moments. He was the best thing in it, if you ask me. 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.